Welcome back. So, violence of the nation's schools continues to be a problem in Trinidad and Tobago. President-elect of the Association of Psychologists of Trinidad and Tobago, Kelly McFarlane, who is also a clinical psychologist, joins us now to discuss the issue. Good morning, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Something has gone awry with our children. It is, I suspect, and I can say that almost every week we are seeing incidents of violence flaring at the nation's schools, and it would seem that we do not have a quick solution to the problem. What has gone wrong?
Well, I think, this idea, as we were kind of discussing before, of, boys will be boys, children will fight, has been part of our culture for a little too long. And we have come to a point now where the violence is almost commonplace. But, when we talk about violence, especially violence amongst children in particular, there are a number of factors. A main primary factor is environment. Another one is what are the coping skills, the conflict management skills, what are the psychological issues that these children are having, because yes, children do experience this depression, anxiety, and other psychological challenges as much as, many people tend to think what they have to be depressed about, what they have is not that simple, right? But also children learn from observing in their environment how adults around them solve problems, manage conflict with each other, talk to each other, deal with each other. Another thing that sometimes perpetuates violence in schools or bullying and things like these are basic needs, neglect, challenges with educational attainment. I'm not understanding what's happening in class because maybe there's an underlying learning disorder. So I think a main thing to look at is what are the underlying causes. I would love to see some research done on what the factors are that have brought us to this place that exist currently, demographic factors, which genders, what's happening in the home, what's happening mentally, what's happening intellectually, what's happening in terms of coping, in terms of social intelligence, emotional intelligence, that have us where we are now with our children.
Some persons are going to say what you have said are nothing new. I mean, some of us would have grown up in very violent communities. There was always drugs around. There were always bad messages in the music, in the movies. We always had some sort of bad person in the community. So why is it that some persons who are successful today, they manage to elevate themselves out of that environment? But we're seeing today so many young people gravitating towards criminal activities or some bad sort of lifestyle? So
two things. One, protective factors. A lot of, and the second thing is positive reinforcement. And believe it or not, a lot of times there is positive reinforcement for violence. One, you get recognition, you get safety because nobody troubling you, you need money, you get to take the money so your basic needs are met because they're not met otherwise. You get popularity. There are positive reinforcers to violence, unfortunately. And the other thing, the protective factors, in that even children who grow up in those environments, a lot of them, they have very nurturing, very present parents. They have very no nonsense, no tolerance for violence parents that instill certain values in them. Or even if it's not a parent, it's a neighbor, it's an auntie, it's a granddad, that's really present with them. And then even intellectual development and IQ and these things are also protective factors that help children to sort of make different decisions, from the majority. And then there's personality traits. So a lot of children, they just are, we will call them different in a particular environment.
Yes.
And that difference protects them. And their focus is elsewhere. Their focus is on schoolwork, or some of them even find comfort in, okay, I'm just going to focus on my work because I'm not doing very well socially, And so that sort of helps to cushion, you know, what happens. The human beings are very diverse. We have so many things that help to make us who we are, things that are innate, that we're born with, and things that are within our environment.
Let us deal with what could be termed as a controversial issue here now, because when certain people in Trinidad and Tobago see this level of violence being carried out at the nation's schools, they always say, well, and they always blame, well, it's because we banned corporal punishment, and that is what is causing this. No,
all the research shows that corporal punishment perpetuates more violence. It teaches children, one, fear, like they do what you're telling them to do out of fear of getting licks, as opposed to learning the core lessons that you're trying to teach them and the core values that you're trying to teach them. And, you know, this is not something that just popped up, that people just say, oh, well, let's just stop hitting children. Let's just stop using corporal punishment. It came out of mountains of research. The ideal thing in terms of behavior modification and teaching children how to interact and how to get what they want and get their needs fulfilled and be good, you know, social beings is positive reinforcement. What we can't miss is lessons. We have to help children truly understand what we're asking them to do and why, and we also have to model the behaviors. Adults have to be just as disciplined as they want children to be, and model the behaviors that we want children to adopt, because this do as I say and not as I do is not realistic. It is do as I do. They will do as you do. They probably wouldn't do it while they're afraid of the belt, but it will be part of them as they become adults. And so then you have that cycle of, you know, the children not actually getting these lessons. They get older, they do the thing anyway, and they beat it out of their children, and then they get older and they do it anyway, but they beat it out of, well, beat it out of.
I get some licks, you know.
Yeah, well.
I don't think I did very badly, you know. I'm just saying.
Yes,
but go ahead.
Well, you know, there are always exceptions to the rule. There are always exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that, you know, sometimes it goes a little far.
Yeah.
You know, you don't ban corporal punishment. And we hear stories a lot of times of people who are traumatized by licks either from home or even from in school, where they feel like they were unfairly targeted. And all children are not the same. Some children, they would get licks and they really would just be stunted by fear. And it's going to, when a child is afraid or anxious or anything like that, they don't learn. They don't process and take in new information. What is it that we want at the end of the day? Not for the child to learn a lesson. So another important thing is that the frontal part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, it develops as we age, as we grow, through our interactions with our environment. And helping children develop that, we do have to talk to them. We have to help them learn to rationalize. Well, why did you do that? We have to ask them the questions for them to look inward and answer those questions themselves. And that helps to develop a healthy, well-rounded, you know, sort of insightful child.
But some people may say it is because of that same sort of posture, that soft posture, as to, boy, why are you doing this? Why all of this debate and discussion that would have contributed to the situation that we are facing now, because there are no punitive measures.
Good. I'm glad you made that point, because what I should have said as well is that taking away corporal punishment does not mean we take away punishment.
Right.
We just use alternatives. So you know, what I was alluding to is one thing that a lot of parents could do with their children and so on. And remember, discipline starts from baby, you know. You
Yes.
don't just, the child gets big and all of a sudden you're trying to instill values and discipline and so on. This starts from small. You develop a good relationship with your child, a respecting relationship, a close, safe relationship. They are more likely to listen, right? And to take on the values that you're showing them. But there there are to be other measures in place for punishment, consequences, apart from the positive reinforcement, which again research shows children learn better through positive reinforcement than licks, right? But we have things like taking away the iPad. You know, a lot of parents say taking away that phone or that iPad hurts more than licks. The child would prefer the licks than to lose their device, you know. So taking away things, making, you know, maybe we used to ban children, you know, grounding them, you know, their allowance reduces,
going the
whatever.
naughty corner.
Right, for the younger ones, naughty corner, go to bed early, no calling anybody. All of these things, there are things that, especially in today's world, where it comes to electronic media, whew, they hit harder than the belt.
So you need to mold children from a very, very young age. And as you're saying, you can't do that when they get to the age of 11, 12, 13, 14. It's very difficult then.
Yeah. Parenting is, let me tell you, parenting is a very involved job. You know, we can't just have a child and expect it to do all the right things.
It's also a science and a balancing act.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. What can or teachers do or principals do in the school environment?
So now also, you know, similarly, you have heard stories of people whose teachers have been so instrumental in their lives. A lot of times teachers, whether they signed up for it or not, pick up the slack for where some parents might, you know, leave off in terms of children who aren't being properly attended to in school. And there's this, you know, the teachers might be, just have time to sit and talk with them, notice, you know, pay attention to how they're doing in their schoolwork, what's happening to them socially. You know, these things go such a long way. It's so valuable, you know, because sometimes the parents just don't have either the resources internally or externally. They don't recognize, or they're just really busy, you know. Different people have different circumstances. But yes, teachers could, if they so desire, you know, spend that time actually recognizing their children in their class and what's happening with them, give feedback to the parents, give advice to the parents, you know, in terms of what might help the child, and really help to nurture, you know, healthy development for the kids.
I think what you're alluding to throughout our conversation is really, you know, the saying, it takes a village, and I think that is where we have left behind, and we need to return to.
Oh yes, definitely, for sure. As I said, you know, parenting is a very tough job, and it's a huge undertaking, and I think people you know, we have to really take that seriously. But again, of course, we become parents under different circumstances. We have different life circumstances. We're at different ages and stages in life when we have kids, and so yes, you know, it's helpful to have that sort of social support. As a matter of fact, again, research shows that social support is the #1 predictor of good outcomes for well-being and so on, and or good prognosis even for physical illnesses, right? Social support is #1, you know.
How do children deal with negative influences?
Okay, so again, because of the different personality traits and different protective factors, that does vary. Some children will move away from it. They're not comfortable in amongst negative influences. Some children might find it quite intriguing and interesting. It's just something new to understand. And then again, because, you know, if they're in an environment where that is positively reinforced, they may try to fit in with it, especially if protective factors of parents who are looking at what they're doing and conversing with them and giving them attention. If those protective factors are not there, they're more likely to say, well, okay, how do I protect myself in the environment in which I am in, you know? And what am I noticing around me? What are the models around me for the people who are safe and who are popular and who are having their basic needs met? That's what I'm going to go towards.
But it also speaks about, let's say, the structure that has been put in place, the system, the organizations that have been put in place to assist children. It also tells a tale that these organizations, this structure, they have not been serving the children how they're supposed to be serving the children, and they have to look at other influences to get that support. It also it gives a wider picture of the failings of organizations or structures in place.
Sure.
I put you to think.
Well, yes, you are, because I'm wondering, are you looking sort of at the music and the mentors and things like that? Yeah. And you know, in some Caribbean islands recently, I think at least 2, if I'm not mistaken, within the last year or so, they banned certain types of music from playing on the radio.
Yes.
For good reason. Right? Because, I mean, when you start to realize that there is a crisis in your environment, you have to take drastic measures. Listen, we have to protect children. We can't blame children. You know, we have to protect children. We as the adult have to do what needs to be done to protect children. Sometimes that includes making some very hard decisions.
Yeah, unpopular decisions.
Very unpopular.
My point was that if it is a child says to a teacher or principal or to their parents, look, I'm being bullied. And the teacher, the principal, the parent, they do not intervene. As you're saying, the child is going to find some way to protect his or herself.
Exactly, correct. And, you know, a lot of times people don't intervene. One, because they have ideas about, well, the child has to be tough. They have to go through these things. You know, boys will be boys, kids will fight, you know. Or 2, they really just don't know what to do. And a lot of times, you know, sometimes people personalize it. Well, I was bullied, I didn't like it, but you, it's not about you. You know, your child came from you, but they are not you. And they will deal with things differently. They will feel differently about things. It will affect them differently. And we have to meet them where they are. They are them. They are an individual, you know. And so, you know, it's really important, I think, when you put your child in a school, to find out what the policies the school has in place with regards to bullying are. That schools should have policies with regards to bullying. Are they no tolerant? Are they, you know, are they really slow to move, and so on? And figure out how you would protect your child in the event that something like that happens.
Yeah, I think it's a problem that has to be dealt with head on, and it's not a problem that we can stick our heads in the sand.
Correct.
Because it is not going to go away.
That's right.
Anything else you'd like to add before you leave us this morning?
You know, I think I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I think it's so important. And I just want to encourage parents that it's so important to develop a healthy relationship with your child. And what that looks like is safe communication, in that the child can come to you without you making it about you or getting overly emotional about things, at least in front of them. Because what I often find is that children feel they need to protect their parents from being upset. And that's when they stop, so many children, they stop talking to mommy or daddy because mommy will be stressed, so I can't. And then they try to deal with things themselves, and they can't. They're not cognitively developed enough to do that as yet. And so it's very distressing for them, and it takes away from school. So parents, you know, just mind your own emotions in front of your children, and be a safe listening ear. Include them in your solution finding. What do you think we should do about this? You know, asking them and making it collaborative. That's
Ms. McFarlane, it was a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Yeah, as I said, it's an issue that has to be addressed, so thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so it's time for a break, but let's take this time to check. Oh, we have the news? Oh, there's a time check. So you want me to give the time check? Oh, there's a time check. It's coming up.